And welcome everybody to another Bangers and Classics podcast. That's with me, James Ruppert, and him, David Malloy. And what have you been up to, David?
Not much I like to publicly share now.
Oh, right.
And specifically, I'm not going to tell anyone
No.
about having to get someone to open the door without a key.
No, you don't want to do that.
It was a component failure, but that's not the point. I haven't seen many classic cars. What about you? Have you seen much in the way of exciting cars?
Well, actually, a really exciting one, and it only lasted for a very short time. It was briefly seconds, but it was a proper V8 Vantage Aston Martin. It was red, and it was behind the old lorry Land Rover for a few moments, and as I was going somewhere, and I had to turn off the road. But it was right up behind me. It was a magnificent thing. Filled the rear view mirror, so that was terribly exciting. So whoever you were off to do something interesting, and in a very interesting car, obviously doing about 2 miles to the gallon at the time. Well done.
Yeah. Would this be an Oscar India version, James?
I would have said so. Even though I looked at it briefly, I can tell when one's behind me, I think.
Yeah.
And it looked good. It was a magnificent beast, and I just caught the side profile as it went past as I was going the other way. But it was lovely.
You know why they're called Oscar Indias?
No, I've got no idea.
It was because they were introduced in October, so OI stands for October Introduction. So they came known instead as Oscar Indias.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. I think that applied to the whole V8 range. There was a revamped version introduced in October, and that was where it came from. That's what I'm told anyway, which could be a load of nonsense. Or I could have made it up. I mean, who knows?
Well, there you go. I like the sound of that, though.
Yeah, it does. It seemed a bit strange. Why not just call it the Mark II or something, or whatever, instead of OI or Oscar India? It sounds a bit odd.
It's a lot cooler though, isn't it?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
No, not for me. I think it's a bit naff. If I'm absolutely honest,
right.
I've always thought it was a bit naff. But that's just me.
Yeah.
And people are used to that from me, not going with the flow.
No, that's fair enough.
No. Anyway, so we have a banger classic to attend to.
Oh, do we?
I'm afraid so.
Oh, right.
It's not an Aston Martin.
Oh, dear.
Lovely though the V8 Vantage is, and it is a beautiful car. There's some positivity from me about a car this week.
Yeah.
That it's a gorgeous car. But what we have here is a car, well, you might like, you might not. It's the original Ford Escort Xr3, and not the XR3i. This is the original one, which I think came out in 81, announced in 1980. Obviously, it's a hatchback front-wheel drive version, James.
Yeah.
What do you make of it? Or what did you make of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the car of its time. I've always been slightly underwhelmed by them personally, and when I ran GTIs, obviously I wouldn't look twice at an XR3. XR3 seemed like I know we're not talking about the XR3, but so it always for me it was a very ordinary car. I don't think I drove very many at all. I certainly never bought one. I'm a terrible badge snob, as you know, David. And for me, it was just a basic family car, a very efficient one, very good value, and sort of easy to keep running. All the people I knew who had them, they were pretty reliable, and if you wanted to fix them, they were cheap enough. But yeah, it's a basic small family car which outsold all the others pretty much. So
we are talking about the XR3 though.
Oh, we're talking about the XR3 now. I thought we weren't talking about
No.
Oh, right.
No, shall we start again?
No, you can see. No, absolutely.
No.
I just know. I mean, all it is a basic Escort with. Now, I saw an awful lot of XR3s because I actually in the 90s I did work for several Ford magazines, so I saw an awful lot of them up close, and that was at their crumbliest period where actually they were quite cheap to buy, which they're not cheap to buy anymore. They're okay. It isn't a Golf GTI is basically all I have to say on the subject. So it's a bit like you and MX-5s, David. I'm sort of underwhelmed by it all. Okay, and there are some special ones, but it's not special enough for me.
Oh, right. Well, okay.
Sorry about that.
That's always a contrary view, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the XR3, originally 4-speed gearbox, only a 5-speed came along.
Yeah.
Had the 1.6 litre CVH engine. As launched, it had the carburetted engine. not
Yes,
fuel
indeed.
injection, came with the XR3i, and they put out a whopping 96 brake horsepower. It did have shorter gearing because of the lower final drive ratio. It had stiffer suspension than the standard car, Pirelli P6s, obviously 3-door, and very nice alloys. I did like those. I have to say, I prefer it to the Golf GTI.
Oh,
I
for
always
crying out loud!
always have done.
What's the point?
The Golfs are boring, James. I remember my first experiences with a Golf was friends, folks had his and her Golfs, and I was in them quite a bit. We used to go to swimming pool, etc. I was taken on to be thrown in to the deep end, even though I couldn't swim.
Yeah.
I just didn't like them. I thought they were somewhat Spartan, hard riding cars. I just didn't get the whole thing. They were well screwed together, but so was a Tonka toy. I just did not ever get the love for them. I did like the Scirocco, I'll give you that. That was the best use of a Golf ever, was a Scirocco. But no, I never took the Golf. The XR3, I liked. Sort of everyman appeal to it, but I think it was a better looking car than the Golf GTI.
What?
Oh yeah.
Goodness sake.
The detailing was nice. The integrated spoiler was nice. The wheels were nicer. It just looked sportier, I think. It actually handled better.
I don't know about that.
Oh, it did, yeah. But it had wider tires, and Ford generously and carefully originally gave it P6 tires, which gave it an advantage over the items fitted to the Golf. So it would definitely grip harder than a GTI. It had a lot less power than I think it was 16 horsepower down on the Golf. The Golf, if I remember correctly, at that period had a 1.6 injection engine, and obviously Volkswagen got so scared that they had to up it to 1.8, and it still wasn't any great shakes. But no, I genuinely prefer the XR3 to the Golf GTI. I think the original is best. I know the later versions with the fuel injection, etc., were a bit more refined, probably a bit faster. But no, the original for me is best.
Right.
For me, the original is a great little car, and I would have to say, yeah, it's a classic. I know you may well disagree, James, and you have the right to be wrong, of course.
Well, it is a classic, David, because of sort of sales and impact and so forth. But it certainly wasn't a better car than a Golf. I mean, there's only mad dogs and Scotsmen would have that sort of view.
Oh no, I think you'd probably find that most Scottish people would probably agree with you. Yeah, that's because they're mad.
They're mad, absolutely.
Yeah, they're all mad.
Yeah,
I'm the sensible one, mate. Yeah. Nah, I just never got the Golf. Possibly it's also a yuppie thing as well. I thought, yuppies drive them. That for me was bad enough. Anyway, my hot hatch back in the day wiped out the two of them. They were far better than either car. It was a Red Bull 11 Turbo. There was a cracking little car. But anyway, XR3 classic. We both agree on that. I would have one. I suspect you would say, no thanks. I'd rather have a cup of tea.
No, I don't need one, thanks, David.
I'm quoting Boy George. I miss quoting Boy George.
Yeah.
You doyen of the 80s, you forgot that.
Oh no, I did. Well, I did know. I didn't know that you were. That's the first time I've heard you quote Boy George. But there you go.
It's probably the first and only time I'll ever quote Boy George.
Well, I mean, you did say to me that time, "Do you really want to hurt me?" And I said, "Actually, I do, David." But
no, I didn't. No.
Luckily, we're separated by several hundred miles at the moment. So
yeah, I don't know. No, I'm trying to think of culture club songs to hit you back with, but I really don't know many of them.
I did. Yeah, I did work with a bloke who went to school with John Moss, who was the drummer of.
All right.
And he said he was a nice bloke. Got to go, David.
We'll take a break, and that's the bell ringing for a break. You're listening to Bangers and Classics, the motoring podcast that's more unreliable than a 1974 Austin Allegro built on a Friday. Okay, so we're now back after the break, and Mr. Whippert and I have sorted the differences out over the Volkswagen Golf and the XR3i.
I don't know about that. I don't know. This could be the last Bangers and Classics podcast, David.
That is not what you said off air, James. You said I was right. The XR3 is a far superior product, but you could never admit that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody believes you, but there you go.
Oh, I have a witness. I have a cat. Mind you, he's sleeping, but he hears everything. He will back me up if I give him some fish or something, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to talk about a film. Just because, I think we should.
Yeah.
And it's a film that I rather like, and I think you've not seen.
Well, you've told me
Disappointingly.
about it. You told me about it several times, and obviously you've told me so that I go and see it, or or get it out, or whatever. And obviously I haven't done that. So
I
yeah,
know.
I'm very late with my homework. The dog ate my homework. So yeah. So
What?
tell me. So tell me all about it, because
What it was?
it just sounds like a very parochial and sort of quite boring film, David. I hope you put me right.
Oh, it's not parochial at all.
No.
It's set in Edinburgh in the 1980s. It filmed in Edinburgh
Mm,
in the 1980s. Came out, I think, in 85. Filmed probably 84.
mm,
And it's a film called Restless Natives.
yeah.
And it's the story of two really young, underemployed chaps who decide to start robbing tourists using a motorbike.
Right.
Filmed in Edinburgh in the Highlands, and not necessarily all in the Highlands. So some of it look Goylehead, places like that. The scenery is really very good, and there's an absolutely stonking soundtrack by Big Country.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, brilliant soundtrack. There's a story about that. They were going to record a soundtrack in Glasgow, and Bruce Watts at home in Dunfermline. There's a knock on the door, and Bruce opens it, and the chap says, "Come up from London. I'm Jeff, so come on in, you come." And takes him through to the lounge, they're chatting away, and he realises, he says, "Oh my God, you're Jeff Emerick, aren't you? You engineered the Beatles." "Yeah, that's right." He says, "Hang on a second." So he runs through to the kitchen and he says to his wife, "Nick down to Co-op, get some good biscuits. We can't serve them that one brand stuff we've got." And it's Bruce Watson himself that tells that story on the recently released special edition Blu-ray. And indeed, I think it was also in the DVD version of the film. But it's a very funny film. It's gentle humour, a little bit
Yeah.
like a Bill Forsyth film, possibly not quite as funny, but it's a very good film. And if you like cars, well, there's plenty of old cars to see in it. You've got Nanette Newman and her husband appear in an early scene, and I think it's a red Ford Sierra Estate. Be quite an early one because it's 84. There are Ford Escort Mark II Panda cars, which of course
All right.
were everywhere in the 80s.
Mm,
There's lots and lots of other cars. The Mercedes limo at one point. It's a Japanese film crew who bizarrely come over to film the bandits and involved in a chase in their Suzuki SJ410s,
goodness me.
which is the best use a Suzuki SJ410 was ever put to. Let me assure you.
Mm,
And the lads themselves use a Suzuki GP125 bike as their main form of transport. It's a very, very good film, and you can say it's a summary film. International cast. One of the protagonists is a chap from America, from an organisation called the Central Intelligence Bureau. I wonder what that was supposed to be. James?
I have no idea.
Neither do I. But it's a good film. Definitely well worth seeing. Enjoy it for the visuals, the soundtrack, the humour, and of course the old cars. I thoroughly recommend it, particularly if you like the earlier Bill Forsyth stuff like Gregory's Girl and That Sinking Feeling. I think you'll very much like this. So there you go, James. There's one for you to watch as well, my boy.
I will do, absolutely. Yeah, I'd better catch up with that.
I might even have a spare copy of it now. You never know, I might send it to you.
Oh no,
Oh,
I'll have to watch it then, won't
yeah,
I?
knowing you'd probably move address or something just so it wouldn't get to you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, hold on.
hang on, that's the Volkswagen Golf GTI
It
Owners Club.
is absolutely.
We have a challenge to do this week,
Oh,
James.
did we?
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
right.
I mean, contrary to rumours, it's the
Yeah.
summertime.
Oh, right.
And I thought we'd go for something a bit summery now. We could be boring and go for convertibles, but we've done that a couple of times.
Have we?
Yeah. Oddly enough, the MX-5 was never selected for the shortlist. Whoops, sorry about that, folks. Nor the Volkswagen Golf Cabriolet either. Oops, there I go again. So we're not doing convertibles, just in case it provokes a fuller row.
Yeah.
So what we are going to do is classic motorhomes.
All right.
We should take bangers and classics on the road, and because most hotels won't put up with our behaviour,
No.
we'd probably find somewhere we'd better kip. So I thought, well, we'll get a motorhome.
Yeah.
We can spread the word from a classic motorhome.
Yeah.
£10,000 to spend. Only criteria is it has to have an MOT.
Yeah.
That's it. So I know what I've found, James, and I think it's quite a good one.
All right.
I'd love to hear what you found.
Would you?
Not really,
Oh,
no, but
okay.
I'm just being polite.
The word, absolutely. Well, yeah, I didn't really bother looking for one until quite late in the day, really, which is not unusual for me. But also, as you know, David, I've got a contractual thing with the Bedford Enthusiasts Society, so I'm actually obliged whenever it's a slightly commercial vehicle to actually select one of their fine products. And I've gone down the Bedford Rascal rabbit hole. I don't know if you've ever been down the Bedford Rascal rabbit hole, but they did actually make a camper van.
I was evicted.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Uh, so the one that I could find, it's currently on eBay, and the top bid is 1750. It's only got a couple of days to run, so it probably won't go very much higher than that.
What?
Well,
Well,
it
but
might do.
might go up to 18 quid.
It might go up to 18 quid, but no. So yeah, 1700 quid at the moment. And I rather like those. They're sort of cute little things. I can never understand. I tell you what, the other day, we obviously have a lot of camper vans up our way, and uh, I mean, someone had it was quite a massive smart. They actually had a four-door smart. I can understand those two-door smarts that they tow behind camper vans, but this was a four-door one. It seemed quite huge,
Hmm.
and uh, with a rascal, I don't think you could have anything. I mean, you could barely get a push bike on the back. But I've always enjoyed them as vans, commercial vans. I always think they're great. And yeah, it's got a side sliding door. It's got the roof that pops up, so you can sleep one above and one below and all that sort of stuff. And I can't think of anything better really. And it won't get in the way. And again, I've lived next door to people who've got sort of camper vans and caravans, and it's basically entire frontage of their house is full of all sorts. Whereas this, you could stick on your drive or just stick on the pavement, and it wouldn't take up very much room.
All right.
But you're still saving on your hotel bills. But I couldn't think of anything better to go camping in a Bedford Rascal. So yeah, I don't think camper van.
Yeah.
What?
So you've gone for the Rascal, James. Yeah.
I have, yeah, that's right. A rascal for a rascal, David.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Mm,
Well, I
mm.
went for a van. I think may have been produced by the people who now do the National Lottery. Before they did the lottery,
All right.
it's a Talbot Express Camelot.
Oh, goodness me.
Yeah. Yeah. Found it on eBay. It
Mm.
was £7,495 fixed price.
Yeah,
It has an MOT till March
yeah,
2023.
yeah.
It's covered 62,000 miles,
Right.
and it has a 2 litre petrol engine. Now, if you know the Talbot Express, James, it came along
I do.
more or
Mm.
less when they stopped making the Talbot cars.
Yeah.
It came along, I think, in the 80s, mid 80s. And this continued to 94. This one's a little bit earlier. It's a 90 or 91. It's an H registration. It's obviously all Talbot Expresses. It started out life as a Peugeot J5,
Yeah.
and it was built a joint Peugeot and was it Fiat facility in Italy.
Mm.
Uh, it's front wheel drive
Yeah.
as well. It's got 4 berths. You'll be pleased to know.
Yeah.
It's some previous advisories for minor corrosion. The seller says, however, there are only 3 minor rust spots on it now, one in each of the 2 doors, and seems to be one in the scuttle as well. It's fully kitted out, and this is very important,
Yeah.
James. It's got a shower.
Oh, wow.
That's it.
Goodness me.
And it's also got a 15-inch LCD TV. So we take along a little DVD player,
Yeah.
and you could watch Restless Natives.
Goodness me.
Yes, that'd be brilliant. So
Yeah.
that's that covered. I think the interior I would describe it as in fair condition. Could do with a bit of freshening up, but I'm sure you'd be the man for that.
Oh,
You'd
that's
soon get
nice
your
of you to say.
dustpan, your brush and dustpan out and sort that out for us.
Possibly.
And yeah, that's about it. Really, there's not much more to say. It's interesting old van. Looks in pretty fair condition, pretty reasonably good condition. I imagine you could take it pretty much anywhere you wanted and have a nice holiday in it. Anyway,
That's
there we go. That is my selection for the camper van. And on that note, we'll take a final break. Tired? Weary? Struggling to sleep? Just listen to bangers and classics and you'll pretty soon nod off. And we're back after the break. Basically, what's happened during the break is that the Bedford Enthusiast Club have been in touch.
Have they?
Apparently,
Yeah.
they've expressed a disappointment I didn't go for one of their products.
Yeah.
I've asked them to be on the same deal as you, James. So
Yeah. Well, I see. Absolutely. Oh, hold on. Here they are on the phone.
now, I wonder what they'll think of this, James.
Well,
Because we're going to talk now, I think, about Reliant,
Lions.
British car company, sadly no longer with us. Now, before we start, there is somebody I know who is
Yeah.
looking for either a Morris Marina
Mm.
or a Reliant Scimitar GTE to buy.
Right.
If you have either, a reasonable price and reasonable condition,
Mm.
matter of some mechanical work done, then let him know because he genuinely is looking for one of these cars.
Right.
He's a chap with many cars,
Yeah.
and he has mechanical skills, shall we say.
Yeah.
So serious request. We're not messing around for once.
No.
Anyway, Reliant James,
Yeah.
based in Tamworth, weren't they?
They certainly were.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And tell me now, who was known, probably to himself, but to many people, I think, as the Bard of Tamworth, a musician? You've
I've
got
no idea.
you know this guy.
Do I? I don't know.
Well, he's kind of unique. Julian Cope.
Oh, Julian Cope.
Yeah,
Oh.
Julian Cope. In case you're wondering, younger people, Julian Cope was frontman of an 80s band called The Teardrop Explodes, who then went solo and has released many albums over the years. He's a complete one-off. You'll probably dislike as many of his songs as you like, but the ones you like, you will like a very great deal indeed. I think that's probably the best way of describing him. He's a complete eccentric, one-off, but a very intelligent guy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he ended up living in North London because a friend of mine sold him a car. So there you go. It's another car connection on this one.
Yeah, well, he was in Tamworth at least during the 80s and probably into the 90s.
Yeah.
I know that much because a lot of his St. Julian album features photographs taken around there. I think it's actually a map of Tamworth with various locations for videos, etc. Again, there's a good album for you to look at, St. Julian. Or Floored Genius Volume 1. Not Flawed, Floored Genius Volume 1. There are some great songs in it. You won't like them all, I don't suppose, but the ones you do like, well, you're going to love. I can assure you of that. And no two people will probably like the same songs.
No.
That's just how it was. Anyway, Reliant Tamworth. I believe they started it there in the 1930s, more or less in someone's back garden, James.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And they produced, fairly low volume cars. Were never a massive company. At one stage, I believe they were actually the second biggest UK owned car company.
Absolutely, perfectly possible at that time.
After British Leyland, yeah. They produced obviously 3-wheel cars. Clarkson likes to take the mickey out of them, which means there's a good enough reason to like them if he doesn't, I think. So they also produced some really wonderful sports cars, I think, James. Sporting cars. The most famous, of course, was the Scimitar Gte and later on the GTC. Scimitar Gte was a lovely shooting brake, favoured by none other than Princess Anne.
Really? I didn't know that.
No, not many people do, it seems. No, I mean, Mr. Corrugator will be straight on to tell us that on Twitter, I am sure. Produced over many a long year from the 60s into the 80s in various versions, with Ford V6 power.
But there was the Sabre as well, wasn't there?
Sabre came before it, yeah.
Which is quite a pretty little thing.
Yeah. They were pioneers, certainly in British terms, in making car bodies out of fiberglass. They adopted that, I think, in the 50s. And that meant that, for example, the Scimitar and the Sabre, they had fiberglass bodies.
Yeah.
They looked very, very good in it. They hired good designers. I believe it was Tom Caron was one of the designers. I think he did the GTC and possibly the GTE as well, James.
Yeah.
He also did a car that was a Reliant in all but name, and that's the Bond Bug.
Yeah.
Because Reliant bought Bond in the early 70s, and they produced the Bond Bug. Essentially, it was a Reliant. It was from a design intended for Reliant. It was initially built in Bond's old factory in Blackpool, but it was very shortly thereafter I moved across to Tamworth, and that's where they were built. Now, the Bond Bug, I think, is a Bangers and Classics favourite, I think we both have to say.
Absolutely, yeah, we do like that. It's a very, very stylish car, whether it has 3 wheels or 4.
Well, there was a 4-wheel.
There was,
because the Webster Motor Company, WMC, I think in the early 90s, was it? Or was it the 80s, perhaps? I can't remember. But they built a series of 4-wheel Bond Bugs. I think they called it the WMC Bug, something like that. And they're great little things. They actually suit having 4 wheels.
Yeah.
They didn't make many of them because it wasn't a long-lasting concern, I'm afraid. But they did make some. And Reliant did a prototype long before that. It was a prototype, I think, in the early 70s of a 4-wheel Bond Bug, which was a shame they never put it into production because I think that would have enhanced its appeal considerably, James.
No, that's right. But there was also the Rebel as well, if you remember that.
Yeah, they did so many 3-wheel cars at that time and vans. That was the meat and drink. Obviously, the Scimitar was a sort of more prestige product. And then they brought out another Scimitar and another Sabre, which were, of course, were small convertibles. And I think it was the SS1 and the SST.
Yeah.
I think it was the SST was given a makeover by William Towns, who is a man responsible for certain Aston Martins. I think the DBS was one, and the Lagonda, Aston Martin Lagonda V8 was the other one.
Yeah.
And I think he styled a car called the Railton. And various other vehicles, one called the Hustler as well, was a William Towns product. So you had the likes of Tom Cowan and William Towns designing cars. You had running gear, mainly bought in, but not for the smaller vehicles, for the three-wheelers and the Bug. It was proprietary Reliant mechanics he used, but for the Scimitar and the bigger cars, and indeed for the later sports cars, it was all bought-in mechanics. So you couldn't really go too far wrong with these, I don't think,
No.
James.
It was certainly the three-wheelers I remember as being the preserve of motorcyclists who had that as their winter transport.
Yeah.
And then in the summer they just go back to bikes. But in the winter, on a bike license, you could drive a three-wheeler.
That's right, you didn't need a car license to drive one.
No.
But I mean, the Bond Bug in particular became very much a niche vehicle, and it's continued thus to this day. It's still very popular. In fact, I think the numbers of those on the road is actually growing rather than contracting, as people find them stuck away in barns and lofts, etc. Because they're not very big and they don't weigh much, the body shells.
No.
So you could probably tuck it away in your scullery for a few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not really notice. So you had those, and then in the 80s, at some point, I think it was 86, 87, they sold the Scimitar to a company called Middlebridge, and it didn't last long there. I think production started in about 88 and finished about 1990. That was sad. But in the meantime, I think Princess Anne had, 9 or something of them over the years. Yeah, I think she had 8 Reliance and 1 Middlebridge. And then obviously the company was sold various times over the years, and it was diminishing returns, James. They get involved in, I think, with Piaggio and various other ventures, and
they did actually. Yeah, I do remember that sort of last period where they imported loads of strange little vehicles, the Ape and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they moved away from Tamworth. They moved to Burntwood, James.
Yeah,
close to Tamworth factory, which I think was sad because obviously they were a Tamworth company. Eventually, time, tide, and cash flow caught up with them.
Yeah,
and that was them. I think they've been gone for about 20 years now, something like that.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, which is a shame because they made some interesting, indeed some very nice cars over the piece. Definitely much missed. So that's Reliant. It's a very much potted history that we've done based on absolutely no research whatsoever, because we've both, for different reasons, been very, very busy this week. But we thought we'd bring it to you anyway, just because, well, we're idiots like that, aren't we, James?
Very much so. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if we could revive the Reliant mark. That would be very, very good.
Yes.
There was actually a very good line, I think, in Minder, where he said, "Oh, I've got he's having a chat with someone on the phone, and he says, yeah, I've got a Reliant for you." And the chap goes, "Oh, those are three-wheelers, aren't they?" He said, "Well, normally." So
whatever that means.
That's right, whatever that means. And then the conversation is obviously moves on to other things. But yeah, that was I do remember that quite clearly. But there you go.
Yeah,
good old Arthur.
Good Arthur Daly, yeah. Yeah, that was a good program. But we'll maybe talk about Minder another day, in the cars in Minder.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The cars of Minder. Yeah, because I think the Capri in that is certainly a survivor, isn't it?
It's the Mark II Capri.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Now, there's another car in shot on Arthur's lot. I can't remember what it was now, but it's been suggested that Terry may have made the wrong decision in going for the Capri as his company car.
Yeah.
We'll have to investigate that a bit further, I think.
No, absolutely.
Anyway, last part of the pod is it's a danger zone. This week's Danger Mobile is a car that was once seen in droves everywhere, and certainly in the UK, it's hardly seen anymore. It's a Fiat 127.
Yeah.
I'm told by the computer there were 119 left in the UK roads, and something like 90 and so on. Yeah. So it's very, very slim pickings indeed. If you don't know what a Fiat 127 is, well, it's a very early super mini. Came out in 1971. I believe originally as a two-door with a boot rather than as a hatch, James. The hatch came a year later.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Won the European Car of the Year award. And by 1974, they'd sold 1 million of them. They made 1 million. Transverse front-wheel drive car. Small engines, originally I think 903cc and 1049cc. Second series came along a few years later in 77. His main rival at that time was the Renault 5, which came out I think a year later than the 127. They were both fine cars, slightly different philosophies I think behind them, but two great little super minis, and they really stole a complete march on the competition because Ford didn't bring along the Fiesta for several years thereafter. So they had to market to themselves for a little while. The resale one came along 77, and there was a Series 3 version, quite a short-lived Series 3 version, which came out in 1981. Apparently was quite well received. Only lasted until 83, when the Fiat replaced it with the Uno. Now, to my mind, James, 127 is a cute little car.
Mm.
It's got good running gear. It's Fiats were pretty well engineered in terms of, certainly the engines were good back in the day. Always a bit of brio to them. Good to drive. Rust protection, well, it's a 70s car. What do you expect?
Yeah.
You know, you've got to bear that in mind. They all did that gov. Lots of space for its size. Very versatile. I like them. And again, there are so few left that they're in danger of disappearing from our roads altogether. And that, again, as I always say, would be a damn shame. So if you're in the market for a classic Super Mini, there's a great one to go for. Get a 127, get one that's been looked after. Just check out what needs done to the chassis and the body shell. If it's been repaired, check out the repairs. And if you get a good one, cherish it.
Absolutely.
And that's it, folks. Yeah.
Well, that's right. But but there is also a Yugo version, by the way. If you really want to make yourself suffer, but I shouldn't think there's very many of those left. That was the 45, 55, 65. But yeah, but certainly, I'm looking at a picture in a book of the late model one, as you say, that was only around for a couple of years, and that I don't recognise at all. I recognise the early ones really well, but the later ones with great big headlamps, you don't. But the Yugo actually was quite pretty by comparison. But there you go.
I think that's us for this week, James. It's another podcast in the bag. Will we return next week?
I've no idea, David. I don't know. I don't plan that far ahead.
So we may see you next week. We may not. Yeah. If we don't, thanks for listening anyway. If we do, thanks for listening, and hope we tune in next week.
Yeah, cheerio, everybody. I'm going to go and reevaluate my life and the XR3.
I think you should. Cheerio.
Okay, bye, everybody.